In this question, we are given the expansion x divided by 5 plus x squared all to the 8, and we are asked to find the coefficient of x to the 4 term. Okay, so let's see how we could do this. So if you cast your mind back to the last video, we introduced this formula, and at the time I did say to you that this was the rth term formula, but to actually be careful, the rth term does not equal the xth term. And of course, explanation for the origin of this formula and a bit of background was given in the last video. So in this video, I'm just going to dive into actually using it and answering the question. So we have our rth term formula. We need to apply it to this specific case. And we can do that if we make a choice for n equals 8, which is the power of our expansion. And then we make a choice for a and b, which are the two terms in the expansion. And we have to make sure that there's a plus in between. And in this case, there's already a plus, so we don't have to worry about that. And we can take 5x to the minus 1 as our a and just x squared as our b. We stick all of that into our formula. So the n gets replaced by the 8. The a gets replaced by the 5x to the minus 1. And the b gets replaced by the x squared. And so the only unknown we now have in this formula is actually the r. And we need to choose our r such that this formula spits out x to the 4 term, okay? And to be able to do that, we have to first simplify this in a form such that we have x to some power, and from that we can figure out what choice of r needs to be made, okay? So in particular, I have an x to the power there, and all of that is to some power, and I have x to the power there, and all of that is to some power. We don't want that. We just want x to 1 power. Okay, so let's see how we could do this. Well, we're just going to apply rules of indices. So this 8 minus r is going to apply equally to the 5 and to the x to the minus 1. But then when it applies to the 5, I get this term. But when it applies to x to the minus 1, power to a power is going to multiply. So I'm going to get minus 1 times 8, which is minus 8, and minus 1 times r, which is plus r. Okay, so we've simplified this term. Now let's look at this part, which is x squared to the power r, which is just going to give me x to the 2r. Okay, so now if you look at this, we have the numbers which are separate here, and then we have x's which are separated here, and we can combine the x's because the base is the same in both cases. So we add the indices. So I'm just going to have minus 8 plus r plus 2r, which is going to give me minus 8 plus 3r, and these numbers here are completely unchanged. Okay. So now this is what I was saying. So we now have our rth term formula, which is giving us x to some power, right? And we need to choose r such that we get power of 4 here, right? And we can do that by just setting up an equation. We can say our power is minus 8 plus 3r. We want that to equal 4, okay? And when we set that to equal 4, we can solve this for r. We take the 8 to the other side, 4 plus 8 is 12, and then we divide by this 3, so it gives me r equals 12 over 3, which is 4, okay? So since we have our r, we put this back into this formula, and so the r gets replaced by the 4, and the 8 minus r then gives me a 4, and I don't have to worry about the x to the power term because we only want the coefficient, right? If the question asked me for the actual terms, I will then include this part as well, and I would replace this r by 4, which will give me the power of 4, obviously, okay? But in this case, we don't need that, so I'm going to ignore the x term and just keep the coefficient. So the coefficient turns out to be 8 choose 4 times by 5 to the 4. And when we work that out in the calculator, it gives us 43,750. Okay, so we have answered our question. I hope you found this useful. If you have found this useful, then do consider subscribing.